today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about why partnerships fail when they're in constant overwhelm. I feel like the purpose of partnership is it should be easier, right? You're managing the stress together. It should be easier when there's two of you. Resolving differences creatively is where synergy happens. When one person stays calm, it can be contagious. Having the ability to speak calmly to one another and in a way that's caring and personally responsible without blame. To remain blameless means I don't engage in blame. If you are feeling blaming, I don't engage with that. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we are talking about when stress takes the wheel. And you know, it seems normal and natural, right, that stress would kill a partnership, but we need to distinguish between negative and positive stress. Is there such a thing as positive stress? Well, there's stress that builds up your resilience, that builds up your ability to respond. And there's stress that's just straight up destructive. And even stress that can be good for you can be destructive after a while. That's part of the recipe, right? So when you're weightlifting, those last reps are stressful. That's when the muscle's tearing, and that muscle tearing actually builds up the muscle later on. It's a positive stressor. But if you can keep going, if you do that every day, the muscle never has time to recover, and that stress starts to become harmful. That would be overwhelm. Overwhelm is when you just keep going. You start to become overwhelmed because there's a stress going on that you can't rest from, or when things come up that you're not equipped to manage, or maybe you're being asked to lift way more than you can, and you're trying to find some way to do it. And maybe you get it done once, but you don't have the resilience to do it again. So overwhelm and stress, very intimately related, but stress on itself, not necessarily bad. Joanne says, my husband and I are under constant pressure, work, finances, kids, running our business. Lately, it feels like we're always fighting. One of us shuts down, the other one pushes harder, and nothing actually gets resolved. Why does stress change how we treat each other so much, right? And it's a great question, Joanne, because I feel like the purpose of partnership is it should be easier, right? You're managing the stress together. It should be easier when there's two of you. But what happens is when there's two of you, you take on more, right? I can bench press more when somebody spots me. But when there's more than either of us can lift, or we haven't figured out a strategy where it can be taken care of, that's when overwhelm happens. Chronic pressure, not conflict, is the real threat. The conflict will come up when there's chronic pressure. The last episode was about silent expectations, silent contracts. It's often constant pressure that brings those unfulfilled expectations and silent contracts to light. When things are working, we don't talk about our silent expectations, the things we thought the other person was going to do that they didn't do, that we never told them. It's when the stuff hits the fan that happens. And couples often misinterpret stress responses as personal flaws. Like, we all have different responses to stress. Some of our responses are healthy in certain environments. In other environments, not so much. If my response to stress, when I'm feeling attacked, is to fight back, well, if I'm in the ring and the idea is to win the fight, fighting back is great. But if it's my partner and I fight back, not so good, because if I win, if I knock my partner out emotionally, or I win and they lose, I lose. Because my marriage is predicated on the theory that I'm uplifting my partner. And if I win and they lose, I'm not uplifting them. I'm only uplifting myself. And stress often brings out that kind of reaction. When couples have destructive conflict, by definition is, I'm going to win, you're going to lose. One of you has it or both of you has it. If both of you have it, it's really bad. If one of you have it, the other one might be able to end it. What happens is the part of our brain called the amygdala that manages danger gets activated, and it's all emotion. There is no logic. It has three responses: fight or shut down, play dead. And we might not always have the same response to stress, by the way. Some things we might be programmed from our childhood to fight. Some things we might be programmed to run away from. Some things we might be programmed to shut down. It might be that we are coming to a situation where there's a new kind of stress that we don't recognize, that we don't have a program for, and we might shut down just to figure out what the hell it is. Well, Brad and Gwen, remember them? They didn't think of themselves as in crisis. They were functioning. They were productive. They were handling their responsibilities. But everything felt urgent all the time. Brad would become decisive, sharp, and impatient, pushing for solutions. And Gwen, when stress would come up, would get cautious, emotionally vigilant, and sometimes a little exhausted, trying to prevent anything from happening too fast, prevent fallout. So Brad's in there, he wants to get it done, and Gwen's like, no, be careful. These are their natural responses to stress. And that brought up conflict. Brad would be like, Gwen, come on, we got to kick butt and take names. And Gwen would be like, no, we need to find out what's going on here before we even decide whether we're supposed to be kicking butt and taking names. Maybe we just need to take names and find out who they are. And they would fight about that. Brad said, I feel like if I don't stop and stay on top of everything, the whole thing's going to fall apart. And Gwen said, I don't even know how to relax anymore. Brad's so fired up. I like, there's just no space for me to be me. And they thought their partnership was broken, right? They came to a relationship because they were done. But it wasn't broken. It was just overloaded. You see, the way this thing with the amygdala works, this part of our brain, it's not a big part of our brain. If we were out in the jungle and we're walking through the jungle and we hear a rustle, a big rustle, maybe we hear a big branch break over there, the amygdala goes, holy crap, that's a bear, a tiger, a lion, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And it immediately starts a chemical reaction in our body and we become super focused. And the thinking part of our brain is almost inactive. The emotional reactive part is super active because if it is a tiger, a lion, or a bear, we're either going to run, play dead, or fight. And we're going to judge in a snap second. If it's a bear, much bigger than we are, and we don't have a weapon of any kind, we're probably going to play dead. Which actually works with bears, by the way. If it's a lion or a tiger, let's say we have a knife, we might fight. But you know what? Running is a death sentence in both of those scenarios. If it's a skunk, running is the only scenario. You see what I'm saying? But the amygdala decides that in a split second. And not only that, but our body's so hyped up on adrenaline and other good body-made chemicals that we're going to do it fast, efficiently, and quickly, but without thinking. Now, the problem is in our partnerships, that part of our brain is still active and it doesn't know we're not in the jungle. It feels like we're in the jungle and we react without thinking. And that's what was happening with Brad and Gwen. When that survival mode kicks in, when we get frustrated or afraid, survival mode kicks in and we prioritize protection and safety over connection, right? Instant partnership killer. We do not, when our amygdala is driven, go, what do you think we should do? We act. There's empathy, almost non-existent. Nuance, what's that? It's either safe or it isn't. And if two partners are activated with each other, I'm going to win. You're going to lose. The energy of that fight intensifies. This is a no-win fight. And patterns start to emerge after a while. What a lot of couples do is they become conflict avoidance is a good short-term strategy, but it's a long-term death sentence for your marriage because all creativity comes out of differences of opinion. Resolving differences creatively is where synergy happens. Or one partner pushes for control, pushes and pushes and pushes. The other one, seeing that there's no tuning them down and no winning, shuts down. Maybe they withdraw. A lot of times, that's called stonewalling. I'm just not going to listen to you anymore. You're freaking nuts. Both of them, regardless of the strategy that they've engaged in, feel unsafe. No partnership can prosper or thrive under these conditions, whether it's at home or at work. If you are two business partners and you're having this kind of conflict, it's a killer. I've seen more businesses collapse and be partnerships dissolved because of this kind of conflict. And marriages, I can't tell you how many partners I've worked with who have come to me looking for a way to end the conflict, but save the marriage, save the partnership. They want to save the partnership. Well, Brad and Gwen, through their work with Rich in Relationship, stopped trying to fix each other, stopped trying to communicate when they felt really overwhelmed. And the first thing we did was we worked on eliminating the overwhelm. We started identifying what are all the things that you're handling or not handling. Who is going to be responsible for what? Where are we going to get some extra help? If this is just too much for you, where are we going to get to, like, one form of extra help was hiring me to help them. Then we worked on identifying what are the things that are triggering you both. Because part of the overwhelm was, part of the reason why they couldn't handle what was going on is they were so busy in that destructive conflict. Let's identify the triggers. Let's name the stressors and let's get blame out of this. It is perfectly okay, for example, to say, when you say X, Y, and Z, I feel like you might be trying to control me. I don't know if that's what you're really doing. I just want you to know what my reaction is. And I want you to know that so that you can either reframe what you're saying or so that when I have that reaction in the future, I can tell you, hey, I'm having my reaction. We need to find another way to do this. Right? They started to dismantle their triggers and the reactions to the triggers. When one or both of them was, I'm going to call it activated meaning their amygdala is on fire, they stopped. But it wasn't stonewalling. They would say, I'm activated. I need to take 20 minutes to take a walk, to go to the bathroom, to do some prayer, meditation, mindfulness, which are all help us move from our amygdala to our cerebral cortex, which is the thinking part. And then I can revisit this, okay? Because nothing good is going to come out of me right now. That's actually a great line. Nothing good is going to come out of me right now. Let me go reset myself. And then once they did that, we taught them how to use I statements. We taught them how to make sure that they were really hearing what they thought they were hearing using committed listening. We even gave them a special form of empathetic listening that is unique to Rich in Relationship, so that not only could they hear the other person, but they could start to rebuild connection. And through these tools, they started to manage the overwhelm better. Part of it was being created by their own reactions to each other and inability to talk about it constructively. But part of it was a frick of a lot going on for them. They learned that calm, when one person stays calm, it can be contagious. It can be. And safety, having the ability to speak calmly to one another and in a way that's caring and personally responsible without blame, really important, to remain blameless. To remain blameless does not mean that I'm Teflon and never get blamed. To remain blameless means I don't engage in blame. If you are feeling blaming, I don't engage with that. If I'm feeling blaming, I don't engage with that with you. Maybe in my mindfulness time, in my meditation, my prayer time, I examine it, I look at it. What's driving that blame? What's the hurt that's under it? What do I need to set right in myself so that I stop blaming? Because blame is destruction. Responsibility is a foundation for growth. We helped Brad and Gwen to transform blame into personal responsibility and growth. In personal responsibility, there is opportunity. I can take Gwen's inventory all day long, and it won't do me any good whatsoever. But when I take my own inventory and become willing to change and grow from it, that's when good things happen, right? Be the change you want to see, said Mahatma Gandhi. They learned calm is contagious, as I said before. They learned, what they really learned was, once they stepped out of survival mode, once they had their amygdala identified and under wraps, then they could have calm, creative, caring conversation. And out of that, trust and safety could be built. And out of that, creativity could happen. All right, well, I talk a lot about intimacy. Let's talk about creativity. Creativity, really constructive creativity between two people that leads to synergy, occurs in a safe, trust, caring filled space. Once they got to this space, Gwen said, my head's clear, I can think. Brad said, I stopped feeling like everything was on the line, like I was being disrespected, like I was responsible for everything. Things fell into place. You see, survival mode may keep a partnership alive from an outside threat, but it slowly kills intimacy when you kick into survival mode to a perceived inside threat. If you're spinning, in the last episode we talked about spinning the giant plate of partnership. It takes both of you spinning it, and you need to spin it together in tandem. If one of you pushes too hard, the plate pops off. You need to spin it. Sometimes one of you spins it and the other one doesn't touch it, and then they turn and go, wow, look at that big plate spinning. And you say, oh, look, if you just do this, we can both be spinning it. It'll be so much easier. Spinning that plate of partnership requires care. Spinning that plate of partnership requires personal responsibility. Spinning that plate of partnership so that you prosper requires setting aside blame, remaining blameless. Not that you'll never be blamed, but that you will not blame. You take responsibility and clean up your side of the street, and the other person will either follow suit or they will eventually leave, because blame, that kind of hurt and anger, cannot survive in the clarity of personal responsibility and caring communication. It just can't. If it doesn't have someplace to land, they'll find someplace else for it to land. I'm going to tell you that Brad and Gwen that I work with, they come to me for the most part, 90% of the time, actually better than that, because they're tired of living in a blaming relationship and want to have that prosperous partnership. I've got a super high success rate because the people who come to me want it to work. They're more committed to their partnership than to blame. Prosperous partnerships are built when each partner learns to exit survival mode and they learn to work together. When they learn to work from personal responsibility and shared responsibility. Hey, if you want to learn more about the kind of communication that I was talking about, go to richinrelationship.com. But I really especially would like you to help us grow Rich in Relationship, the podcast, as a movement. The mission of Rich in Relationship is to save 10,000 marriages in the next 10 years. Help us be part of that movement. Like us, share us, subscribe to this station. And in the meantime, have a fantastic day and an amazing tomorrow. And thank you for listening.